Hello marketer, it's Ty here and welcome to another episode of Lean Mean Marketing Teams. I'm excited to welcome our guest Natalie Truong, CMO for Asia, Middle East and Africa and partner at Mercer to the show today. Natalie recently moved from Melbourne to Hong Kong and leads a hub and spoke marketing team covering 18 different markets. Natalie has a stellar track record in financial services, having worked at CPA, ANZ Bank, Bank of Melbourne, before holding multiple roles at Mercer, a global management organisation with 25,000 colleagues in 43 countries, part of Marsh McLennan Group, which has revenue in the billions. The topic we tackle today is a complex and fascinating one. It's about how brands can successfully enter markets in Asia and how CMOs that are moving to this region or managing teams in this region can be successful. As always, we cover a lot of ground, starting with Natalie's personal experience and the adjustments Natalie had to make to her own leadership style and her expectations of how fast things might move, through to how to educate the global head office and adjust your marketing strategy based on the unique dimensions of each market in terms of maturity, culture, tech adoption, and major platforms, ecosystems, and channels that are used. Natalie also shares important insights on what to measure and what not to measure in each market. We also take a look at how Natalie has structured her team, what unique capabilities exist in this region, and which capabilities she's looking to build in her team. It was fascinating to learn more about the preference of talent in this market to be deep specialists versus generalist marketers. Also love learning about how Natalie is looking to develop her team in the areas of speaking up and communicating verbally, and the strategies to make sure that yes actually means yes when you're dealing with marketers and business leaders in this region. She shares some great tips on that. There's a lot more packed into this episode, so as always, if you hear something you like that you want to take action on, then we've got you covered. Dylan and our team listens back to each episode and creates summary notes loaded with all the tips and strategies in a summary PDF document. Just head to growthgenerators.io, look out for this episode and download the notes. Thank you and enjoy the show.
Welcome to Lean Mean Marketing Teams with Ty Hayes, where you'll hear from leading CMOs and thought leaders about what it takes to create a high-performance marketing team. This podcast is brought to you by Growth Generators, a consulting firm that helps CMOs design and build modern marketing teams that drive growth. If you need help optimizing your marketing team, head to growthgenerators.io. Now, let's get on to the show.
Welcome Natalie Truong, Chief Marketing Officer for Asia, Middle East and Africa at Mercer to the Lean Mean Marketing Teams podcast.
Thank you, Ty. It's a pleasure to be here, so thank you for having me.
Yeah, and we've got Jack Phillips to thank, our guest from episode 25 for connecting us, so thanks, Jack. Now, I'm really excited for today's chat because we're going to cover a topic that I think is relevant for any brand looking to enter or expand its presence in Asia and to any CMO that may be asked to lead a team or oversee marketing operations in Asia. In particular, we're talking about global companies that may be headquartered in the West, US, UK, Australia, or elsewhere, and they've got ambitions for the Asian market. And I thought with your incredible experience, I thought you'd have really useful insights today to share on the challenges, peculiarities, and opportunities for a CMO moving to and or leading a team in Asia, including how you need to adjust your leadership style, how you've gone about building a modern team in Asia, and how this may be a little bit different to a team that you would build in Australia or the US, and then those lessons for the global head office and global CMOs regarding the challenges of making your brand relevant and resonate in each market and the differences between that. And also, I think the other perspective, how satellite or spoke marketing office can most effectively work with the global office to help them better understand the uniqueness of each market. So quite a lot to cover as always, but how does that sound to you?
Sounds great, Ty.
Brilliant. All right, well, to kick things off then, can you give us a brief summary of your career today?
Okay, so like most young people, I started my career in travel. I thought I wanted to see the world. I thought it was a wonderful career path to take. But little did I know how little it paid. So I quickly learned there was no money in travel. So I pivoted to corporate life. I then worked as a process analyst for a company called White Pages or Census, as some of you might remember. But then found my calling in marketing. I just fell into it and absolutely loved it. So I've worked in marketing for companies like CPA Australia, ANZ Bank, Bank of Melbourne, which is part of the Westpac Group, IOOF, and now I'm now the Chief Marketing Officer for the AMEA region at Mercer, and also a partner at Mercer, which is great.
Brilliant. And for the audience's benefit then, can you tell us a little bit about Mercer? It looks like a really interesting organisation.
Yeah, fantastic organization. So I've been at Mercer for 5 years. In that time, I've had three roles in two different countries. But Mercer is a global management company. But I like to tell people we're in the business of people. Essentially, we have 25,000 colleagues in 43 countries, helping people with workforce transformation, helping people with employee benefits programs, and helping people with retirements and investments. We are part of the Marsh McLennan Company, which is a global company with about 75,000 people, and annual revenue of about 17 billion. So a great company. It is the longest company I've ever worked for. So I do have a soft spot for Mercer.
Yeah, and it sounds like they give you some great career opportunities with the number of roles you've taken, and it's such an interesting portfolio of products and services that they offer. So fascinating. Can't wait to dig a little bit deeper into that. So moving then straight into the challenges, peculiarities and opportunities for a CMO moving to and or leading a team in Asia. Can you tell us a bit more about your current role as CMO for AMEA and partner at Mercer? Like, what's your remit and what are you there to help Mercer achieve?
Yeah, so the region is a melting pot of just different people and cultures. And when I was asked to take on this role based in Hong Kong, I thought, what can I actually learn and what can I actually give? Everyone was saying, look, you at least look the part, you look the Asian part, how hard could it be? And I said, oh, I'm not sure about this. I have spent some time in Asia. So my day-to-day role is quite different. So across the 18 markets covering Asia, Africa, and Middle East. As you know, we've got 18 different countries, 18 different languages and cultures. But often what happens is people go, oh, it's Asia. So this one big blob, that is a couple of hours from Australia, but it's definitely not like that. So I spend my days thinking about the ways in which I need to communicate to the teams and the business leaders, the ways in which we need to help businesses grow, because each of the businesses in this region are also in different phases. You've got, more mature markets like Japan, Hong Kong, Singapore. They're much more mature in the way they think about marketing and brand, etc. And then you have emerging markets like the Philippines, Indonesia, those markets where marketing and advertising is quite a new concept. And I say new because you and I have had centuries of marketing and advertising. But the role encompasses, brand, marketing, communications, PR, media, internal comms, digital, and then demand generation for those 18 markets. So every day is different. and every day is about either, trying to figure out the different campaigns, but also it's about coaching. The capability set is a little different here. Once again, it's not that in the West where we're better or that it's bad here. It's just different. And so if you come in here with thinking you're just going to bring all of everything that you've learnt about brand marketing, etc., I just don't think you'll be successful.
No. Like I said, so many diverse cultures and nuances in their level of maturity and tech adoption and how you go to market and what works. Is that what attracted you to the role or what drew you to this opportunity?
Yeah, it is. I mean, to be honest, if you look at my CV, I don't spend long in roles. And I find that as a marketer, I think you need to continually be exposed to fresh ideas, new markets, new target audiences, new ways of doing things. So absolutely the attraction for me was to come into an environment that I was quite uncomfortable in, to be honest. When I got here, I'll tell you, when I arrived here, I actually had no idea what I was doing. And all my friends were like, I don't understand. You look the part. You've grown up with some Asia in your culture, and yet why are you struggling? And outside of the language and the culture, the different style of leadership I found was not a struggle, but just a challenge. I'm so used to having leaders and CEOs that share a vision and then just get out of my way. And then I just march forward and go, here's what we've delivered. Here, the style of leadership is much more directive. So that was, I felt like I was spending my days just directing people instead of, creating and co-creating and things like that. I actually sat down and did a SWOT to the great amusement of my CEO, because I actually thought, what am I doing? Am I even up for this job? And I went through the strengths, the opportunities, the threats and the weaknesses, and adapting to a different style of leadership is something that you're going to have to get used to coming into this region, I think.
Yeah, and they talk about situational leadership, changing your approach from that more directive to coaching. Yeah, and I imagine that is put to the absolute limit when you enter a new culture like that. And I think difficult for you with, expectations, just because you've got some Asian cultural background that you would fit right in and hit the ground running. But I'm sure you still experience that. Like you said, that culture shock. You're in a completely new environment, this massive role, all of these people looking to you for direction, and you've had to adapt to your approach and probably get used to a different style of leadership from around you and others that you report into as well. Was that the case?
Yeah, absolutely. In this region, and as we all know in the West, Asia has been hubs for many global brands. So Asia marketers have been very used to global headquarters sending marketing assets. Here's your box for the next campaign, just roll it out. So our poor marketers in this region haven't had the autonomy or haven't had the freedom to co-create campaigns that are relevant for this market. And we can dig a little deeper into that later, but just the whole landscape of marketing is different, from the technology, the ecosystems that they use, the way they use marketing and advertising, the way they create content is very different to how we create it elsewhere. But also getting business leaders to understand the value of marketing. A lot of what is done in this region is around relationships. And so they don't understand. So for them, marketing is, can I have a brochure? Or can you do this event for me and order, rice or noodles for me?
To facilitate the face-to-face and the network.
Yeah. And even just to spending time educating on the value of a proper CRM system that is not an Excel spreadsheet sitting on your desktop. Please, could you put it into the CRM to enable us to better communicate and nurture your clients is something that you actually have to teach along the way as well. So it's been super interesting from that perspective.
Fantastic. Well, I might dig a little deeper into how you're building a modern marketing team now. I heard you mention it's quite a full funnel team with a lot of different capabilities in there, but what does it look like in its current state in terms of size and structure, and how's it changed since you joined?
Yeah, okay. So structure hasn't changed so much, to be honest, Ty, but the capabilities have changed in the time that I've been here. So across the 18 markets, we have major teams in China, Hong Kong, Dubai, and Japan. And then we have our hub in Singapore that services some of those smaller markets. So there's a team of about 40 of us across those 18 markets. And I feel for some of these marketers, in some of those smaller markets, I've got one marketer, because some of those markets are quite small for us in terms of revenue, $5-6 million markets. We can't justify, having a marketer in the same way we can't justify having a single HR person or a finance person in those markets. So we hub into those markets. And this one marketer who does an exceptional job for me looks after 4 markets. And we think that sounds okay. It's like saying in Australia, you look after 4 states. It's okay. But she's got, and I'll just give you she's got Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia, and Malaysia. So 4 different languages, 4 cultures, and but she does an exceptional job across those 4 markets.
You mentioned some of the capabilities that you have been building or that have changed. So what have you been doing there in terms of building the capability of the team?
Yeah. Where do we start? Let's start with digital. And certainly it's not just me teaching, it's them teaching me back about their ecosystem as well. So I'll start with an example in China. The world, I don't think, knows much about WeChat and the power of WeChat. There's 700 million people that use WeChat every day. Many of the markets where we're from, you're used to going to Facebook for one thing, going to TripAdvisor for something else, going to CNN for news, and going to different apps for different things. In China, it's a closed loop data set because everyone's on WeChat and they do everything on WeChat. The ability to be able to track and nurture and create relevant content for a customer or a client is much more rich than what you find, because it's very segmented in the markets that you and I are used to. we can see how a customer is interacting with banks, with the entertainment, with gaming, with social, with what they're reading on the news, all on one platform.
Yeah.
And as scary as that sounds from a privacy perspective, for many of us, it seems to work for them. They're happy to give up some of that privacy in order to...
For the convenience.
Convenience.
Yeah.
So digital, absolutely. But also from a funnel perspective, demand generation time. In this region, it's all about hitting the numbers. And I know that's important, but hitting the right numbers is what's important. And I don't think we've taken the time to educate on hitting the right numbers. So when I started, we were measuring MQLs, so marketing qualified leads, thousands of them coming in, and I'd have sales teams going, your leads are terrible. And I'd be like, no, there's thousands of them in there. Apparently they're amazing. So then sitting back and saying to the team, it's not actually the number of leads that you've sent to the sales team. It's actually how many the sales team have accepted and then how many have been converted. Yeah. And then what's wrong with the leads that aren't converting? That's what we want you to look at. So now I don't measure them at all on MQLs. I measure everyone on the team on conversion and revenue, and that's it. So teaching them about making sure that they explain the KPIs, the other capabilities more than skills, Ty, that I'm more passionate about, I think, is speaking up and communication. So you and I, speaking up comes naturally. We've done it from, the moment we could start to speak. In this region, speaking up just isn't the natural way of doing things. An example I can give you of that is recently I spoke to our China team and we just rolled out e-commerce. And I said, there's so many things wrong with this system and there's delays and we're not selling what's happening because we were doing amazingly well before this system came into play. And they said, we're the first to market with this global platform. Global have been supporting us to roll out this platform. I said, have you told Global all the problems with it? No. If we tell them, they won't support us anymore and they won't let us have the first to market platforms anymore. So the ability to speak up is something that I'm constantly asking the team.
Yeah.
And
how do you do that? How do you coach them on something that's so unnatural to them and to get them to do that? Must take a lot of encouragement and I guess showing them how to do it and coaching or giving them the right platform in a safe space. Is that kind of how you do it?
Yeah. And I learned the hard way, I think, too. I used to go into meetings and I used to sit there and go, okay, tell me what's wrong with this campaign that we want to do or this process we want to put in place. And just silence, faces of just dead silence. And someone said to me, you're supposed to be the leader. You can't come into this environment, say what's wrong with this and ask them to tell you what's wrong with it. And I said, okay. So I was given coaching to say, here's the campaign we're thinking of rolling out. Here's why I think it's not going to work. What do you think? So you as the leader need to start with what you think. Ty, I also made that mistake when I started, to be honest. As you do when you first come into a role, you listen. You spend your first 90 or 100 days listening. And then at the 60-day mark, someone came to me and said, and it wasn't one of my team members, it was actually one of the business leaders, sat me down and said, so your team thinks you've got no idea what you're doing. I said, what do you mean? And they're like, well, you haven't said anything. You haven't guided them. You haven't said what your thoughts are or your strategy or where you're thinking of. Because I'm listening, I've got no idea what their markets are like. But yeah, so in this region, you need to come out first and you need to invite them to tell you what's wrong with what it is you're looking for feedback from. So speaking up is something I'm passionate about, and then coaching to make sure they can sit at the leadership table is something else that I'm really passionate about in this region, because I've not seen, now been here for 12 months, a lot of the roles that are similar to what I'm doing are held by expats. They're not really held by local marketers. and sit on the board of the Marketing Society for Hong Kong, and we're developing a course called The Ones to Watch. And it'll launch in September, but it's targeted at local marketers who we think are 3 to 5 years away from taking on either a regional role or a global role, and trying to coach them with some of those softer skills around how do you sit at that leadership table along with your finance director, your HR director. It shouldn't be marketing having to fight for a seat at that leadership table.
I love that. Sounds like an amazing program. And I think it's funny how we use the term soft skills. I think, to this audience, that's some of the hardest skills for them, isn't it? To build that communication and speaking up. But I imagine a program like that would be foundational and amazing vehicle to see that local talent rise. So well done on developing that in the works. One question that piqued my interest, you mentioned the change in the metrics from MQLs to conversion and revenue. What impact did that have on the team in terms of focus and prioritization and outcomes?
Huge impact. A lot of confusion at the start, to be honest.
Yeah.
Very generalist comment, but across the region, as you go to school and study, there's an answer for each problem or question. There's a singular answer. So 1 + 1 is 2. There is no 1 + 1. Potentially, if you add something else, it could be something else. So for them, me saying to them, I no longer care about the 3,000 leads that are coming through. I'm not fussed if you have 60 leads and all 60 convert. So for them, changing their mindset of more to, less is okay, but then converting. So it was actually also quite scary for some of them as well, because they have been so used. I mean, imagine some of them have been with our company for 8, 9, 10 years, and now suddenly someone's come in and gone, we no longer care about this metric that they've been holding you to. Some of the things that I've also had to guide global on. So an example I can give you of that, Ty, is when I started here, Global kept saying to me, your email numbers are terrible in this region. What's wrong with emails? Have they not been written well? Are they too long? Can you go in and have a look? And I went in and I just looked around. It's not a great way to communicate in this region. It might be for other regions or other markets. But you have China that uses WeChat. You have Thailand and Taiwan that use Line. You have the Philippines that does everything on Facebook. So they don't really do email communications here. We do a lot of our campaigns through these non-traditional Western social platforms. And I've been, educating the global team to say, please don't measure this region on emails because it doesn't work. So if you want to report back on our global numbers, please consider these other metrics or platforms that we can audit in the region so that you can start to get an understanding as a global business. We shouldn't just use one measurement and assume that it works for everyone.
Wow, there's been a lot covered in this interview so far. As a marketing leader, we know you like to spend more time taking action and less time taking notes. So we've got you covered. We packaged up all the tips, strategies, and resources from each episode into some beautifully crafted notes just for you. Not ugly AI-generated transcripts, but real notes taken by a real person on our team. To grab the notes, head on over to growthgenerators.io, look out for this podcast episode and download the notes. But be quick, they're only live for a few weeks after the episode airs. Now, back to the show.
Makes total sense when you're in the market, but you can see head office trying to get this standardization. How do we compare markets and get these metrics? But it just comes back to the old saying around measure what matters and the impact that has on what people do. People manage what is measured and has such a incredible impact. And I imagine your relationship now with sales is so much better and your results are so much better by just getting quality leads and focusing on conversion and revenue. Sales no longer getting junk leads, but highly qualified leads, a better customer experience because you're not, putting the wrong people into the funnel, but you're putting better qualified leads into the funnel and probably a much better customer experience as well.
Yeah. And I guess the leaders coming in, I didn't really have to do this back in Australia in Mercer and certainly not in other companies I've worked for, but having landed in this region, and getting sales coming at me all the time saying these leads, this is what's wrong with your leads. Look at them. They're terrible. So I said, okay, that's fine. What I'll do is I will look at all the leads as they come in before so we'll qualify them before they come to you. So for the first couple of months, it's really hands-on, Ty, being here, because I had leads just coming in from, we've got 10 domains across our 18 markets. So every time you went onto one of those domains and submitted a request for contact, I was getting that lead because I wanted to see the type of leads that were coming in. And then I set up a person dedicated to qualifying. So Ty submitted a lead. Does he have a proper email address? Is it a Gmail or Yahoo or Hotmail? If that's the case, you need to make first contact. We're not sending those to the salespeople. Does Ty have a proper corporate website? Does he have a LinkedIn profile on our Salesforce database? Has he already been in contact with us? So we did all of those things before we sent it to the salesperson. And so that started to build a lot of trust. But it's really, really hands-on when you first arrive here. You don't think that as a CMO that you need to be qualifying or looking at leads coming in. But certainly from my perspective, in some of our major markets, I've had to do that. And to be honest, I've actually kept doing that for some of the markets because I found that it's how I can keep in touch with what clients are asking us. So what are their client issues so that we can start to inform more of our campaigns around. At the moment, we're getting so many leads in terms of DEI. Help me roll out a diversity inclusion program. I don't know where we're supposed to start. We would never have that sort of insight if I wasn't getting some of those leads that were coming through. So it has worked out for the better. But yeah, my advice is to be really hands-on and just roll up your sleeves coming in. It doesn't matter if you're a CMO or you're coming in as a head of or anything like that. Get in with the team and really understand the platforms, the ecosystem, etc.
Yeah, smart way to do it. I had Chris Taylor on an episode recently talking about his first 90 days is getting to know his team, the organisation and customers. And I think that's a good hack, is look at all the leads coming in and have someone in your team to help qualify those. And you can quickly get a sense of, have we got the right lead forms, the right CTAs? Are we asking for the right information? How do we need to adjust that to optimise your lead gen and then increase conversion down the funnel, which is a critical part of marketing, is that lead gen. You're getting the right leads in the door and then converting them through the funnel. So I like that little hack to focus on the leads and get hands-on early on.
Yeah.
I like that. And lastly, before we move on, any other differences in terms of skills and capabilities in this market compared to Australia or the US or the UK?
I think the focus on speed to market.
Yeah.
So adjusting how quickly you want to move in this market. One, like I said, in some of the markets, marketing and advertising is really new, but also very different to what you're used to. So plan your 100 days, plan the next 12 months, but add on probably another 6 months to that 12-month plan, to be honest. And, having to adjust to the local tastes and local preferences is something that I've had to learn. So an example I can give you is humor. I love sarcasm. I mean, growing up in Australia, it's what we do, right? I love sarcasm. I love humor. Ads like that or marketing campaigns like that really resonate for me. But it's tricky in some of these markets. In Japan, we don't do humor at all. It's quite serious. It's quite conservative. And yet we find markets in the Middle East loves humor. Markets like the Philippines, humor is fantastic, works really, really well for us. So just being mindful of making sure that you learn those skills and really don't try and come in and go, this campaign will work across all of Asia. It simply won't. Yeah.
Well, perfect segue into our next section then, which is, the lessons for global CMOs and head office regarding the challenges of making global brand resonate in each market. So to start with, can you help unpack some of those differences between the major markets in Asia?
Yeah, really happy to. But before I do, I think I just want to cover a couple of points that are different between this region and then probably markets like UK, USA, Australia.
Yeah.
So the couple of points that stood out for me is, so in the West, we developed sequentially over the last century in terms of our brand and marketing. So we went from radio, TV, PC, then mobile. In this region, I feel like they've leapfrogged. So instead of doing it in that way, they've kind of gone straight to mobile. I was reading research the other day that said in this region, the bulk of people spend on average 7 hours a day looking at their mobiles, which is more than half of people in most other parts of the world. So being able to create content for mobile, I think, is really critical for global brands coming in here or CMOs coming into this part of the world, I think is critical. And then learning how to create brand awareness, not using traditional channels. So not using TV, not using billboards, not using radio, not using print, because it doesn't work. So I have teams that design everything for mobile experience. So they design content that's for mobile. And they're effectively, what they're looking to do is to create content that can be virally shared as quickly as possible to create the engagement they need. That's what they aim to do. So I'm sitting here, I came in trying to do brand campaigns, 18 months ago. I'm like, what about billboards and what about TV? And they just kind of just looked at me. So yeah, don't assume that TV works here. I made that assumption because when I was with Bank of Melbourne and we launched our For the Makers campaign, I chose not to do TV and it fell flat. And we ended up having to buy TV in order to get our brand awareness and consideration up. So I came into this market thinking the same thing. We need TV, but their TV is literally their mobile phones.
Yeah. Fantastic insight. And that's a whole different skill set, to create content for mobile that's viral. A few years ago with the whole content marketing explosion, that was everyone's dream, right? And a lot of cartoons, make it go viral. But there's a lot of skill and knowledge and experience required to do that. So I imagine that's definitely a difference in competency that you need to build in the team.
Yeah, completely. They do everything here. We do talk shows that we create as content pieces. And we created a talk show content recently that we put onto our mobile devices and onto the social platforms. And in under a week, it generated 50,000 views. It's just unheard of for many of the markets outside. So I had our headquarters going, what is this piece of content that we've not even seen or heard of? It's not on the websites. We're like, yes, because no one really comes to websites here. That's the other thing. We measure, unique visitors to the website. And I'm sitting here going, but they do everything through these platforms. You need to stop measuring unique visitors to our website because it doesn't happen. Everything in the region is about growth. How quickly can we grow? You've got markets like India and China, ecosystems, technology, growth. Their platforms are just different. And then you have markets like Singapore and Hong Kong, which are more mature, not so different actually, other than local tastes and preferences and knowing what is happening locally in those markets at the time. Yeah. At Mercer, we have 3 different businesses. So if the health business is not resonating in Singapore, we then pivot and move some of our marketing campaigns to a different part of our business. So knowing that in Japan, honestly, outside of the major difference of language, the platforms they use are similar to what we use, LinkedIn, Facebook, etc. Just no humor. In the Middle East and Dubai, such an interesting, and I'm still learning because I've only been in the role about 4 months.
Yeah.
But humor works really well in the Middle East.
Wow.
And they're happy to make fun of themselves. They're happy to make fun of what they do. And it's been a real eye-opener. And the creativity that comes from that region is just so different and unexpected, I think, Ty.
Yeah.
It's been really surprising.
And just shows that importance of local understanding. So how does your team appropriately gain those insights into each market? So I think you mentioned 18 different markets earlier on, but how do they do that?
Yeah, we have local marketers, and for companies that are looking to come into this region or for CMOs moving into this region, I don't think a centralized approach works. And we have what we call a hub and spoke model here that I think works really well for us, Ty. And I was speaking to some of my colleagues last night in the US and the UK, And they're like, we don't understand. We've got this hub and spoke model, and they're trying to replicate because they see some of the great work that's coming out. And I've said to them, I don't think it works. And when you've got 18 markets that you have to look after, you need a hub because I can't hire a marketer that can look after 4 markets and she or he does your websites, your emails, your webinars, she can't do all that and then do the strategy and then think about the campaigns as well. And the reason it works for her is because we then have a team of digital marketers who set up her website and her web pages and create all that. We have a team who do all of her digital marketing, setting up social media cards, setting up emails, setting up webinars for her that get deployed when they need to be deployed. And those teams, we have people in those teams, and you need to remember, and this is the other thing that I learned, also a hard lesson for me, is I went in because I'm so used to having teams that specialize in being great at digital or great at CRM or great at ABM. This hub team that I had, I came in and I was like, why can't you do these things? Why can you only just set up a webinar, or why can you only create a landing page after I tell you where I want things? And it's because that's what they love to do. So you need to hire the right people for those teams as well. Yeah. As marketers, we want to do everything. We love the variety, but the people that sit in some of my hub teams, I just want to set up webinars and web pages.
They're just deep specialists. That's what they want to do. That's their gig, it's their game. I want to be the best at it.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I've got people that just love Google AdWords, and I only am interested in being the best I can be at Google AdWords and LinkedIn campaigns and Facebook campaigns.
Yeah.
So just give me everything around that and let's work on that. So just remembering some of those things, I think is really, really important for brands that are trying to set up their teams as well.
So what else is in your hub then? So you've got digital marketing. What else is in the hub versus a spoke?
So we have digital, we have analytics, we have creative. So we have a design team, global design team, and we have teams that sit here that do all of our creative messaging, creative execution, etc. Then we have PR and media that sit here, and then we also have internal comms that sits inside the region as well. The internal comms and the PR part has been interesting. I was telling you earlier, I sat at dinner with an Aussie boy from Albury who just moved here in March. So we're both fairly new to this region. And we were comparing notes about what we're learning and seeing about this region. And we both agreed that communication skills is something that I think you underestimate in this region. So I was sharing with him when I started, I've got these amazing communicators who on Zoom or verbally struggle and are a little slower in being able to articulate how they think about what they're trying to work at. But on email, so I'd send an email, and I've had this experience across many of my markets. I've got a digital marketing leader who's Japanese sitting in Singapore. I've got a marketer who sits in South Korea. And I found it, a struggle to communicate. But when I sent them an email and asked them to articulate to me this problem we just discussed, it was beautifully written, better than any writing I could have done. And they articulated their thoughts really well. And I guess I'm sharing this, and I shared it with Nick on the week, marketing leader I had dinner with. Don't underestimate the communications of some of the talent in this region, because you end up losing or not getting access to some of this great talent because you assume that because they can't verbally communicate with you, therefore they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So it was a big lesson for me.
Yeah, that's a big insight. Well. It comes back to kind of marketing principles about know your audience and kind of right channel and right message, So if they're great at written, then give them that opportunity and let them shine through their channels. Fantastic. So you've got a hub within Hong Kong that services all the different other markets. And then I imagine there's obviously global head office. So how does your team deal with global head office, and what have been some of the learnings there?
So our hub is in Singapore, and I'm based That's okay. I'm based in Hong Kong. It's been a real learning curve for both sides. For our local teams and our regional teams, it's been the realization that they can actually say no, and that the global team actually does listen. And for the global team, it's realizing that this has worked so well in 15 other markets. Why hasn't it worked in AMEA?
Yeah.
I guess an example of that I can give you is recently COVID campaign, we were rolling out thought leadership on how to get back to the office safely, how to return to the office safely, what you need to do, how to talk to clients, how clients can talk to their employees about going back to the office. And that rolled out incredibly successfully for many of our markets around the world. But you can't bring that sort of campaign to Asia, because in markets like Hong Kong, Singapore before they went into lockdown, China, we had all been back in the office for 4 months. That was old news. We can't roll out that type of thought leadership. Being able to say to global, that's nice that it's worked in 15 other markets. We can't use it here. And global going, oh, okay, we didn't realize you'd already been back in the office for 4 months. So it has been, and I think part of that also has been my global CMO. He's amazing. Jed Quinn, I've worked with him for about 4 years. He's, one of the reasons I'm at Mercer and continue to stay at Mercer, because he realizes he's built a global team that is very much not about pushing campaigns or pushing KPIs down into local regions. He's all about what can we earn locally, what can we take from local, and what can work in those local markets that we can use on the global front. Yeah. So I think some of that also is around leadership, Ty. And for me, coming in and being able to say, I want you to say no to the global team. I don't want to use this campaign. Yeah. And then supporting them, being right behind them and not, throwing them under the bus or anything like that is very helpful.
Yeah. It sounds like having that trust with the global CMOs being crucial to that. Are there any other structures or just regular communications that help facilitate that in terms of the two-way communication between yourself and the global CMO, and that education both ways around what's going to work, what might not work?
Yeah. The other thing that we also have been doing, Ty, is actually doing A/B testing. So we've let global say, this campaign's definitely going to work, or this creative's going to work. So we go, okay, no problem. Let's take your creative or campaign and let's do a local one. And we'll put them both in market and see what happens. So what we're finding is that is actually starting to work for a lot of our colleagues around the world to go, this is how we should be approaching our marketing as a global organization. We should be allowing local teams to do A/B testing. Now, I'm not saying it works our way all the time. In some cases, the global creative has worked for us. But being open to doing A/B testing and not just going, this is not going to work, you just need to use this creative, I think is another takeout that I've had.
Yeah, that's smart and it's data-driven, and while it takes a bit more effort up front, it's more cost-effective long-term because you're testing the right creative that's going to hit the right mark and have a bigger impact. Sensible, but I imagine it wasn't that easy. Probably something they'd never thought about or never thought they could do until they had a leader like you come in and go, this is what we're going to do. We're going to be data-driven, insight-led, and make sure we put the right communications into the market that's going to have the right impact.
And the right KPIs, not using KPIs that we're so used to measuring some of the things that I said, unique visitors, email conversion and things like that. Being open to other KPIs, being open to, in the Middle East, I don't understand, you've got such a big market. Why are we struggling to get requests for consultation off your website? And in the Middle East, they don't like forms. So on websites, they don't trust forms. They would like you to put your name. I would like to be able to email directly Ty if I have a query. So we put, we tweak some of the pages on our Middle East domains. And on the pages where we tweaked and we put, Natalie Truong or Ty Hayes on those pages, we're getting conversion on those pages. On the pages we have forms on, we get no conversion. We're not getting any leads in. So just measuring KPIs that are relevant, and then helping us educate global business leaders that marketing isn't just about unique visitors to our website or share a voice or the number of emails that we've sent. It's much more diverse or rich than that.
Yeah. Fantastic. And any last pieces of advice on either what global CMOs can do entering a role in Asia, or what global head office should think about in terms of their local teams? Any last pieces of advice for the audience around this really important topic?
Piece of advice, which may or may not be new to you, but certainly I've learned it the hard way also, is don't assume that their silence or their nodding or their yes means they've agreed with you. But because I've also been on this receiving end of this, I think the best way for a CMO or coming in or global is to go directly to the person that you need to have that conversation with. So don't bring everyone into a group, on a group Zoom especially. And this is not just with marketers, Ty, this is with business leaders. I've sat on Zoom calls with business leaders across the markets, and we've all agreed and said yes. And then I find out 3 of these markets have gone off and done something completely different. So if there's a market that's really important to you, that is critical for you to roll out this campaign or to do this initiative, to drive the growth we need, you need to sit down with that business leader one-on-one and have that conversation. And I know it takes more time, and it's more, it's harder because we're used to being in a room where if 10 out of 15 of us agree, then that's what we're all going to do. We're happy to disagree while we're on the call, but as a team, we've agreed that this is what we're going to do. Yeah. It's not the case here. They will all agree, but go away and run their own initiatives anyway.
Yeah.
Unless you have that one-on-one conversation.
Yeah, powerful lesson. And some cultural things in there about not wanting to say no and that kind of respect. But I also imagine the importance of relationship that you mentioned earlier on. So how you build those relationships with the other business leaders and the other partners, and taking time to do that, not rushing through and always making it transactional. Is that something you've had to work on as well, to almost make time to build relationships with these key business partners?
Yeah, I found when I first started here, show and tell is really helpful. They're so used to seeing numbers on a spreadsheet because that's what they've been used to. There's a mistrust generally in the region, as we can all relate to, just because of the way that they've grown up and things like that. So I went to some of the leaders that were questioning the value of the initiatives we were driving. And I sat down. So I got a dashboard created in Salesforce. So it wasn't us pulling numbers out of a system. I sat down with business leaders in the region and I showed them the dashboard. So it had, we call it Mercer Force. I love the boffins here. It's a Salesforce system, but we call it Mercer Force. So I sat down, they could see, they're familiar with the Mercer Force system. They could see, used to all the functionality, and I showed them the numbers on Mercer Force. And so taking the time to actually show them rather than just going, here's a number, you're not converting these leads. I sat down and showed them the number of leads that I was getting in my inbox. If I got a great lead for your market in China, Japan, Korea, wherever, I would forward that to the CEO and say, have you heard of this client? They've asked specifically, can you help me with an employee engagement program for 1,000 employees that I have in these markets? So these people are taking the time to come onto our website or to our WeChat channel or Facebook, writing a message to us and asking us to help them. So they're actually seeing the message, not what is in a system that says there is a lead.
Yeah.
So,
which brings them closer to the customer and that connection.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Taking them as close as you can to what they're familiar with is what's really going to allow you to move faster. So now, even though I report my numbers on a spreadsheet or, a dashboard that we use, I don't have business leaders questioning those numbers anymore because they've seen them out of Mercer Force or Salesforce. And I share the dashboard with them. So I share the links and they can all access the dashboard. So the trust is built quite quickly when they can touch it. It's not that they don't trust you. That's the thing that's really important to remember. It's not that they don't trust you. Trust has come from just, you imagine, years and years of just not trusting the system in general.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And you're just giving them full transparency, which helps build trust.
Yeah.
Love that. Well, we've covered a lot today, Natalie, and it is now time for our Fast Five, where we ask 5 questions, ask for your rapid fire responses. Are you ready?
Ready to go.
Right. So what do you believe are 3 essential capabilities or criteria of a high-performance marketing team?
Relentless curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
gutsy and accountable, and a no-fear culture. So no fear of speaking up, no fear of failing.
Yeah.
So no fear culture.
And how would you describe your team's culture in one word?
Hardworking.
Hardworking. Yeah. What's one metric you've successfully used to track and measure team performance?
Outside of revenue, I think it's our ability to drive and execute on initiatives. So in the AMEA region inside Mercer, we're really well known for driving and leading on initiatives, using non-traditional social media channels, WeChat, Line, etc., Facebook to sell B2B. And we do a lot of our sales on Facebook in the Philippines, especially creating new sales channels, our different markets. So I think the criteria that we're assessed on is how quickly and how efficiently and how effectively we can go to market.
Yeah.
New growth channels.
Yep. And I think with the capabilities you mentioned, you can see how those two link together. What's one skill or capability you've learned recently you wish you developed sooner in your career, and why?
You can be right, but ineffective. I wish I'd learned this, 20 years ago, not even 10 years ago, Ty, to be honest. Yeah. I was and I don't know if it's my background, but growing up, my mum and dad, it was all about being, doing the right things at school and getting the right answers to things. So my approach was all about getting things right, to the point where I think I used to wear people down a lot, to be honest, Ty, and then not realizing that it did wear people down. So I think in the last couple of years, what I've learned is being able to look at a situation and understanding what the end goal is and how I can get there rather than me being right about how to get there. Yeah.
Maybe not always the direct path, but a bit of a detour to get there.
Yeah, and that's okay too. So it's not about being right, because you can absolutely be really ineffective.
Powerful. And what book or books have you read that you found yourself recommending to others, or you think our audience may gain value from?
2 great books, actually. One has become, I think, my top 3. So James Kerr, Legacy, is the book that I've really, I know nothing about rugby. Anyone that knows me knows I know nothing about rugby. But James wrote a book called Legacy, and it's all about the culture of the All Blacks and how they've created such a culture of success. So I've loved that book. Yeah. And recently I read Upstream by Dan Heath. So being able to see and solve problems before they become a problem downstream. So it's a brilliant book, really easy to get through, and great case studies.
Yeah, they sound fantastic. Make sure we link those up in the show notes for anyone interested. And where can people go to get in touch with you or learn more about Mercer?
Great. So on Mercer, we've got many domains, but you can start at mercer.com. I'm in Hong Kong, so mercer.com.hk is great. Yep. But also on LinkedIn, Twitter, all the usual channels.
Yeah. Fantastic, Natalie. Well, thank you so much for your time. I've loved the pre-chat and our conversation today. I think you've shared so many insights about the challenges and intricacies of CMOs and brands trying to enter these markets, how they're all different, and not to think of them as one market, how you need to adjust your leadership style to be a little less around the discovery and a bit more directive when needed. So adjusting that, how you're building the team, to help them with their communication and speaking up, and the culture that you're creating in the team, and the hub and spoke model, I think, was really interesting. So shared a ton of insights, useful for anyone looking to enter the market, as well as whether you're in the global head office or moving into those markets. So thank you for sharing your insights and time today.
Thank you for having me, Ty. It's a pleasure to be here.
You've been listening to Lean Mean Marketing Teams with Ty Hayes. If you love the show, please remember to hit subscribe so that you can discover more tips and strategies to build a high-performance marketing team. And if you're feeling generous, please tell someone about the show who you think would benefit. We're on a mission to help CMOs build their dream team and enable marketers to do their best work. And we appreciate your help in spreading the word.